The underwater city of Shichen, located in Zhejiang Province, China, once housed people. However, it was flooded as a result of the construction of a hydroelectric power plant, and now its ancient ruins lie at the bottom of Qiandaohu Lake. Tourists diving into the depths of the lake can see ancient streets, houses, and temples covered in algae and shells. Some places even show silhouettes of fish and other underwater creatures swimming by. Not everyone knows about the dark secrets hidden in the depths of Shichen. One day, a group of experienced divers decided to explore the deepest parts of the flooded city, where no one had ever gone before. They equipped themselves with the best gear and set off on an expedition full of enthusiasm and curiosity. The dive began normally. Ancient streets covered in aged mud quietly rested on the lake bottom. But as they went deeper, feeling of unease grew stronger. The water felt colder, and the light from their lanterns could barely penetrate the dense curtains of darkness around them. They came across a massive gate that led to the heart of the city. As they approached, the water temperature suddenly dropped and their lanterns flickered, creating a strange fog-like substance that thickened around them. Something moved in the darkness, elusive, definitely present. Suddenly, one of the divers felt something grab his leg and looked down to see a pale, wrinkled hand pulling him into the darkness. He tried to free himself, but the grip was strong and the other divers rushed to help. By the time they arrived, the hand was gone, leaving deep scratches on the diver's suit. They decided to immediately surface, but as they started climbing, they realized that they were lost, and every step forward seemed to bring them back to the same place. Panic set in, and their lanterns eventually went out, leaving them in complete darkness. Their lantern finally went out, leaving them in complete darkness. At that moment, they heard a strange noise, as if someone or something was scratching the bottom of the lake. Each member of the group felt a chill run down their spine. One of the divers, Peter, decided to try turning his flashlight back on. As he did, a weak beam of light illuminated the water in front of him, and he saw shadows moving around. Peter realized that he was not alone. The whispers returned, but this time they were clearer. The voices spoke in an ancient language calling out to the divers. Peter felt an unseen force pulling him deeper into the lake. He tried to resist, but his strength failed him. The team, realizing something terrible was happening, tried to stop Peter, but an unknown force was too strong. Soon, they all felt themselves being pulled in different directions. One of the divers, Lisa, was pulled into an old ruined temple. Inside, she saw an altar surrounded by ancient statues with distorted faces that seemed alive. She felt a wave of terror wash over her, but she couldn't move. The statues around the altar started to move, their eyes glowing with an ominous light. She heard one of them whisper in an ancient language, and its voice echoed through the temple, creating an uneasy atmosphere. Suddenly, a thick, black liquid began to rise from under the altar, spreading across the floor and approaching Lisa. She tried to scream, but her voice was stuck in her throat. As the liquid touched her legs, she felt her body go numb. Meanwhile, Mike and the other divers were pulled to different parts of the city. Mike felt the walls of the old house begin to close in on him, threatening to crush him. He struggled to find a way out, but every time he reached a door, vanished, leaving him trapped. Peter, who was in the deepest part of the flooded city, encountered the darkest part. He saw a shadowy figure with a hooded face standing before him. The figure raised its arm, and Peter felt frozen with fear. The figure spoke ancient words, and with each word, Peter's mind drifted further away. Suddenly, they heard a loud rumbling sound from the center of the city. The sound was so powerful that it made the water around them vibrate. It awakened something ancient and powerful in the depths of the city. Lisa, sinking into the black tar, saw the statues around the altar moving faster. They were coming towards her, their faces contorted into horrifying expressions. Mike, surrounded by moving walls, realized that the only way out was to find the source of the hum. Peter, struggling with paralysis, realized he had to do the same. The hum grew louder and the water became colder around them. Lisa's feet sank completely into the resin, which was pulling her down. Trying desperately to pull away, her movements became slower and slower. The statues emitted a low, menacing roar, which merged with the hum, filling the space around Lisa. Mike, struggling through shrinking walls, made his way to the window and saw the light from the city center in the distance. He realized this was his only way out. Gathering all his strength, he headed towards that light, navigating through the maze of moving walls. Every step he took felt like something invisible was grabbing him and holding him back. Peter, paralyzed by fear of the dark figure, summoned all his willpower to break free from its control. He took one step back, then another, and finally managed to break free from the invisible chains that had been holding him down. As he noticed a light shining through the water, he started moving towards it, knowing that his salvation was close. Lisa, who was almost waist-deep in the tar, heard the hum reach its highest point. She saw the statues approaching her, their eyes shining more and more brightly. Suddenly, the light from the center of the city flashed particularly bright, illuminating everything around them. As Lisa felt the resin pulling her deeper and deeper, her breathing became more difficult, and the statues continued to approach her. Their eyes were glowing in an ominous rhythm, synchronized with a hum that became almost unbearable. The hum and the roar of the statues merged into a single sound wave, causing Lisa to panic. But at that moment, Mike and Peter rushed towards her, realizing her situation and rushing to help. Mike set to work on the safety rope while Peter rushed towards the altar to tear away the resin. Mike and Peter, horrified by seeing Lisa sinking deeper and deeper, began pulling her as hard as they could. However, the resin was thick and sticky, and their efforts to free her seemed futile. Lisa's breathing became more and more labored. Peter used the last of his strength to pull her from the resin, but her head sank under the water. Mike struggled to stay afloat and pulled Lisa back to the surface. Suddenly, he noticed that Peter had disappeared from sight. The flashlight had gone out and dark waters had begun to engulf everything around them. They resurfaced, but there was no sign of Peter. Mike frantically searched the area, but his friend had vanished into the depths. Lisa, still struggling to breathe, watched as Mike desperately searched for Peter. Dark waters obscured everything, and Mike's screams echoed across the lake's surface. But there was no response. They stood there, looking at the place where they had last seen Peter, until they were forced to return to the surface, exhausted and in despair. Rescuers pulled them from the water, but their search for Peter was fruitless. Lisa and Mike knew that Peter would be trapped in those depths forever. They felt their hearts breaking and understood that what had happened would change their lives forever. The light, their last hope, had become a symbol of their grief and horror in the flooded city. Weeks turned into months, and Lisa and Mike continued to try to move on, but the memory of the flooded city haunted them. They often met to talk about what had happened, hoping to find answers and perhaps bring Peter back. Sometimes they thought they saw his reflection in the water or heard his voice at night, but they knew these were just the products of their imagination.